This is Thoughts with C, J, and L.
A podcast by three Asian American people with thoughts on being Asian, American, and people.
In this episode, we're having a winter break IPE session. Hey y'all, this is Editor Kat. I'm here to add a content warning to this episode for discussion of patient substance use, addiction, and overdose in the context of clinical care.
Hey everyone, we're back with another episode. We are still currently on winter break and we are in our respective homes, so we are not at school. And I don't know, we feel a lot more different when we're at home. Winter break really brings that out because we just go back to our childhood homes. And now we're like, oh no, what is happening? And we have thoughts. So now we're going to talk about it.
So many thoughts.
How do we want to start?
Oh, wait, I have a question. Well, okay, actually, I feel like I know everyone's answer, but I'm going to ask anyways. So is the consensus that we all feel like blobs right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Now I feel less bad. Jamathy first introduced me to the phrase blob last week when I told her how I was feeling, and it truly embodies how I'm feeling. Because I feel like I go home and I revert back to who I was. Or actually, it's just the lack of responsibility that I have here in terms of school where I completely just kind of let go and I just sleep and eat. I don't really exercise as much. If I do hang out with friends, it's like a fun little game of maybe pickleball or throwing a frisbee around. It's nothing too intense. And I kind of just blob. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I know exactly what you mean. And also when we move back home, at least for me, because the life that I had where I was living before, it feels like a fever dream.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I'm at home, I'm like, oh, this is the life that I've always had. And then when I go back, I'm like, what is home? This is the life I've always had.
What's going on?
My mind can't fathom that I can be in two places.
Have completely different roles or
Yeah.
expectations of yourself.
Yeah.
The way that I feel is it's very blob. That is definitely the word, but it's also kind of like, you know how hot air balloons are filled with hot air. So they inflate and go up into the sky and are mobile, but then once you stop the hot air, they kind of just deflate and melt into a puddle. That's me. When I'm away, I'm just filled with hot air. And, doing stuff, moving around. But then now I'm not.
Why do we think this is happening?
I don't know, but I will say that tasks that would take maybe 10 minutes to do takes me an hour. And I think it's just the initiation of it. I was like, oh, I have to go to the bank and I have to do all these things and close these accounts or whatever. And I was like, I'm gonna do it on this day. And then I just kind of the day came and I sat around and I was like, I can't do it. And then once I did it, it took 10 minutes and I was done. The time spent sitting waiting for myself to get up and do it would have been so much better if it just didn't happen.
Yeah. It's like you have one activity that you have to do and you put it in your calendar and you're like, oh, that day's full. I can't do
Yeah.
anything else.
Oh, I'm too busy.
But then when I'm in my apartment, I'm like, oh, I still have 30 minutes before I have to leave. Let me study or let me clean up real quick. Let me just
Yeah.
all these little tasks and I do it and it's fine. And then when I'm home, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have 30 minutes. Even before this, or we were gonna record at 9:30, but then we pushed to 10. And then I was like, oh, well, I have 30 minutes now. I guess I'm just gonna lay down and then not do anything because I don't have time to do anything.
Yeah, whereas 30 minutes, I don't know, when I'm at school, I'm like, I can do so much in 30 minutes.
It's also weird because I feel weird about the fact that I have nothing to do. And going back to what we said yesterday, it makes me feel almost one-dimensional that I'm just a student because I'm like, what other purpose do I have other than school? Even things that I have to do here, other than making food or something. I'm still working on school club applications or internship applications. And so that's all for school too. And I'm like, I am nothing.
Wait, did you feel more one-dimensional at home, on break, than you do when you're at school?
Yeah, because I
Or
think at school I like make a point to like call my family, and then I'm like, okay, I'm more than a student. I'm also a part of my family, kind of thing. But now I'm here and I am living the role, so now they're overlapping, and I'm still one-dimensional. Even as far as like exercising, like at least at school, I'm like, this is something I like to do, and this is a break. Here, I'm like, I'm just doing it so that I could do it again later as a student.
oh, interesting. I feel like I have thoughts on that.
Oh, go on.
I think a part of it too, though, might be because you guys have a shorter break than I do. Because I woke up on the 23rd and I was like, wow, I have a whole month off. I'm going to be so free during this month.
Oh,
And
that's true.
it's been like a week now since I started break. And I guess this first week for sure was just sleeping because school is really tiring and really draining. But it's weird because I feel like a more multifaceted person, but I also feel like there is a piece that's missing, and that's a student piece. But it's just like it's so hard to be like a student and then all these other things. So right now I feel like I'm slowly gearing up to being like all these other things and then not a student.
What are you gearing up?
Just like hanging out with my family. I feel like I'm gonna travel a little bit in January, catching up on media that I like.
Being a podcaster.
Oh yeah, being a podcaster. Like there's just no time for stuff like this as a student.
Yeah, I feel like it is hard to bounce back and forth because being in school, it takes up pretty much all of your time. And it almost becomes like a either or. You're either in the school mode or you're not. I felt this a lot in high school where I felt like I didn't really have a lot of other facets outside of being a student. And so, like, during breaks, I would always be like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? Now that I don't have school, you know? I spend all of my time doing school, just trying to get through the next thing. And then when break comes, and it's like suddenly there's no assignments, there's no exams, and it's almost like a existential dread. I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? There's nothing to do.
Working out is interesting though, because yeah, I guess that maybe I do associate going to the gym and working out and stuff with school or like with work, or maybe as a coping mechanism for work, because I definitely haven't been thinking about working out at all. Although I probably will, because it's been like a week for me now. So I'm gonna start feeling like, oh my gosh, I really should start moving again. When I'm at school, I'm always thinking like this is something I have to keep in my schedule to keep myself functioning.
No, I feel that. I think for me, this is just like a side. I was like, oh, I really need to work out. Like, I haven't done it in so long and I should keep doing it. And then I was like, why? Other than, the obvious fact of like staying healthy, but I think I used to do it because I was like in a sport and it would help me with my sport. But now I'm like, I could let go and it won't really matter. But now I think I associate it with staying sane in school, like you said.
Mm.
And it's like something that I need to do. And so that's a part of being productive because that like not only helps with physical health, but helps with mental health to then help you with school. But I was explaining it to someone over the semester what I realized of just how for med school, at least, it's like so lonely because all you have to do is study. And it's not really up to anyone else except yourself to make sure that you're able to learn everything. So that
Mm.
means going to the gym or like taking a break for your own health. Like you can study with other people, and that's like almost comforting. But when at the end of the day, you're kind of just like by yourself and you just have to make sure that all the information goes in your brain.
I think part of it for me is like I do so much work with my brain that it sometimes it's just like, well, I'm so tired. I need to feel like my body did something too.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, going to the gym helps because it almost takes the load off of your head a little bit.
Yeah. Do you think when you work out?
I think we've talked about this. I do. I think so much. Sometimes I don't even notice I'm working out because I'm in my head the whole time.
That's good and bad. That's good and bad. I won't lie.
I feel like the initiation piece is a big part of it though, because when we're home, we don't have to do anything. It's like getting started is the hardest part, but then when we're in school, we already have to do a lot of things and we're already on the go. I feel like it's almost easier to incorporate working out.
This is like Newton's law. Things that are in motion stay in motion.
Yeah, inertia. Our inertia is too heavy right now, so we can't move.
Bro, gravity really be pulling me down today. I think that applies to like all parts of my life though. Like if I'm walking straight, I will just keep walking straight as opposed to like going the shorter route if that means I have to like make a turn or something. Like I noticed myself doing that. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna walk this way. And I'm like, I'm just gonna keep walking this way because like I don't want to change direction.
Wait, that's definitely true for all of us because in PT school we learned that our body is actually really lazy and we always do what takes like the least amount of work to get something done.
Yeah. Like I was talking to someone about this and I don't know how true this is, but I kind of like tell myself this now. Like when I go on runs, if you slowly increase the speed and then go back down and then increase the speed again, like that burns more energy than you just continuously going because you have to start and then stop and then start again.
Like hit workouts.
Yeah, almost. I don't know how true that is because, like, logically speaking, it is just the same amount of time, right? The amount of work that you put in.
Well, maybe you're targeting different muscle fibers though. Okay, if we're talking about running, if you're just running at one speed, then most likely you're just using mostly slow twitch fibers and like muscle fibers that are not as fatigable. But then when you're going at a higher speed for shorter durations and you're jogging in between, so like if you're sprinting and then jogging and sprinting and then jogging, then you're hitting the fast twitch fibers, but then also hitting the slow twitch fibers because they're on regardless when you're sprinting, but also like when you're jogging.
So maybe when you're like transitioning between the two, you use both.
Well,
And
it's
then,
like the Hanneman's. Wait, hold on.
oh my gosh, she learned something in school.
Oh, I
I
learned
know.
something. The Henneman's size principle, where it's like you recruit slow twitch fibers first, and then if you need more force, then you recruit fast twitch or fast glycolytic and fast oxidative or whatever, and then so you can produce more force. But then if you're just running at one speed, then you're only using slow twitch fibers and you're not hitting the fast twitch fibers.
But what if you run really fast for a really long period of time?
But then you can't because
That's
the fast twitch fibers are fatigable.
true. I do
Whoa.
code.
That was cool. Wow.
Yeah, so inertia. Wait, that was actually really cool.
Yeah.
No, it's kind of crazy though, like how much you can learn in a semester. Like I used OMM, which is like osteopathic manipulative medicine. I only took one semester of it, and like I have to take 500 hours. That's like what differentiates us from MD versus DO is MD plus these 500 hours. And I've only done one semester of it, but I went to like a family friend's Christmas dinner, and I was doing OMM on everyone. And then someone texted me yesterday, you fixed my neck. And I was like, no, I didn't. I've only taken 3 practicals. Like,
Wait, what do you do? What do you do?
okay, the philosophy of osteopathic medicine is basically, to me, structure equals function. So, like, we try to find places where structure can be improved. So, like, if you sleep on your side funny, right? And then, like, that means that all your muscles on this side are going to be really tight. And that's going to pull, like, your vertebra one way or the other, or you're, like, really hypertonic. Then we try to find those spots and then we can like do different manipulative techniques to like help improve function in that way and like also improve structure. So a lot of people were like, oh yeah, I have like neck pain or back pain. And I was like, oh, it's probably because you just like sit on your computer all day and your posture's not that great. And then I checked which side. And then I like most of them were like massages, but other ones like you use muscle energy. Jam, I feel like you would understand this one. I mean, Kat, you probably would too. But like it's more related to jam stuff. What you do is you engage the restrictive side. So if like one side is more hypertonic, you like put their face to it or like it just pretend like it's their neck and it's like this side, you put it into the barrier and then you make them like push into their E's to activate their GTOs, their golden tendon organ thing, the stretch receptor thing, because the stretch receptor tells your muscle fibers on the other side to relax. So if you like put your head into that, it'll tell these neck muscles to relax. And so apparently that worked.
Apparently, what they're teaching us is true.
Apparently. I was like, oh, okay.
That's cool. That's really cool. Wow.
Yeah.
Look at you guys go.
Well, now I feel like I can do it to you guys. So the next time we hang out.
Next time we see each other in person.
Yeah. It's also hard. I don't know if,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, what are you going to say?
I was just going to say, should we just talk about what we learned?
I know. Okay, so I was gonna say this is a good segue. Like Do you guys find it hard to like not think about things you learned in everyday life? When I was getting my MPH, like I would notice things that I was like, oh, that could be so much better based off of what I was learning in school. Or like now, we ended the semester by learning about cranial nerves. So like all the sensations and like actions that you could do in your head and neck. And so like I burned my tongue and I was like, oh my gosh, that's this cranial nerve. Like I'm like, I hate that.
I mean, I think, yeah, especially with public health, I think my first instinct is to always, like, whenever I see something that I disagree with, or like, I think this is bad, or if somebody does something messed up, my first thought is always like, okay, what are like the structural factors that led to this event happening? Honestly, I think it's mellowed me out a lot as a person, because I think a lot about why this person would have done something or like why this event would have happened in the first place, not specifically pinning it on a person or like an action that occurred. But that's like public health, right? You always think upstream and prevention. And
Mhm.
so whenever stuff happens, my first thought is always, okay, maybe not the person, but like why, what, could have systemically led to this. And my brother is always like, you can't just always blame the system. Like people have, what is it, autonomy and like think for themselves, which is true, but I think the public health approach is prevention. So
Do
I
you feel
think
like that was different from how you thought before?
yeah, I think, well, we talked about this yesterday, where part of me thinking about how I've changed and like growing up and stuff is just I think a lot less about what individual people think and like how I might disagree with individual people. And I
Hmm.
think part of it is the public health influence.
Hmm.
Do you attribute more things now to like the system or like the environment that they're placed in?
Yeah, when I'm like, I disagree with something, like a perspective someone has, or I disagree with like an action someone did, I tend to think now, like, oh, it's not me disagreeing with this individual person, it's me disagreeing with generations of actions compounding on itself. I don't know, and like decisions and choices that people have made. Everything everywhere all at once.
That's the theme. No, I agree. Just from a public health standpoint, at least.
Yeah, but I mean, what you guys are learning and like your professions are very individual focused. Like it's the opposite approach.
Well, I think though that the environment affects people so much
Hmm.
that our professions are what catches things that slip through. I really think that more should be put into public health, right, as like a safety net. And I think if that was so much stronger, there would be less chronic things that we would have to deal with in terms of like the health profession. All these things are totally preventable and can save so much more money if we just focused on the environment and like things that we can do to improve people's lives in that way. So I do think that the environment really affects a lot more than what we assume. Like a lot of people, I think when they think of their medical problems, it's like, oh, this thing happened to me, but it's like, I don't know.
As in, there's a lot more other factors that are going into it rather than this is happening.
Yeah. I think this is more for chronic illnesses. Even like people who like I was working on for their like over break, the OMM stuff. I was like, do you stretch at all? Like you're a perfectly healthy young person. You don't need to have these dysfunctions if you just like stretch for 5 minutes every day.
Wait, this is related to my final project for my econ eval class that I took. The whole point of our final project was we had to break up these cost effectiveness analysis reports. There was a bunch that we could pick from, and my group, we picked one on non-pharmacological interventions for chronic low back pain. And so basically the report was evaluating the clinical effectiveness, but then also the cost effectiveness of 5 different chronic low back pain interventions. And I think it was like acupuncture, tai chi, yoga, CBT. I can't remember what the other one was. They did like a lit review basically to assess clinical effectiveness, and then they did their Markov model or whatever to assess cost effectiveness over a 5-year time horizon. And basically, they found that yoga was the most cost effective out of all of the 5 interventions for low back pain over a 5-year time horizon. And then at the end of our presentation, our professor was like, okay, well, like, what would you do? Like, what would your recommendation be? And we were just basically like, just do yoga for back pain because it's cost effective.
Wait,
And
how is that in comparison to pharmaceuticals?
Well, it didn't assess pharmacological interventions. In their intro, they kind of broke down interventions into surgical, pharmacological, and non-pharmacological. And they said that they were only focusing on non-pharmacological interventions for specifically chronic back pain that wasn't affiliated with like or associated with like cancer or like pregnancy or whatever. Like it was just back pain.
Oh my
And
gosh,
then
is this IPE? Is this interprofessional?
Oh my
we
God.
I had to do an IPE event this term. It was,
Dude, I did too.
oh my gosh,
Same.
IPE.
This is that, but in real life.
Yeah.
No,
We're
but I agree. If you think about it too, yoga is movement and like you need to do exercise anyways, and it probably helps other parts of your life.
Yeah, literally the whole profession of physical therapy is encouraging people to exercise. And a lot of the pathologies that people have is because of inactivity or atrophy if they're not moving around or their job doesn't allow them to do the movements that people usually do to have like normal movement. Obviously, a lot of interventions that PT has is exercise, and a lot of times it's because people lost like strength in certain muscles that are necessary to prevent whatever pathologies they have. And it's just like, well, if people had the time and space to do these exercises every day, a lot of these problems would not be a problem, you know? But obviously, like, not everyone can do that all the time.
Okay, so this is where the IPE comes in. So Jam reports all the problems, and then Kat's like, "Oh my gosh, this is a public health problem," and then makes a report, and then sends it to the government, and then she's like, "This is why we need to like subsidize work breaks, and we need more parks or something like that." And the government's like, "Okay," and then all of Jam's patients are fixed.
Yeah, so literally, PTs are just holding the fort down until the system is fixed.
It
No, yeah,
takes so much to change the system. Sorry, I just cut you off.
no, no, no. I was gonna agree with that.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, you probably have the harder job in terms of like fixing things. I think that's why I dipped out of public health for now.
It is quite, my whole thing is I'm interested in the policy side of public health. From the policy perspective, public health is so frustrating because you can't just like be like, we should fix everything. Like, I don't, well, I mean, I don't know why. Well, I do know why, because we live in a society and like that's just how our government works and that's just how society works. But like to make any incremental change, a lot of times you just focus on a specific policy and then you write an amendment proposal for that specific policy. And like sometimes it's just at the state level. So you can't even like put it to the federal level. Like you can't make federal changes, right? It's so tough. People will lobby for like decades to get one specific small thing changed. And then that's just like the initial activation energy, right? Because then you have to like, oh, you have
Full
to
circle, full circle.
No,
And
not
there's
the activation
that's
energy.
the reason why we can't make change is the reason why we're blobs on winter break.
The inertia is too strong.
because you have to see through the implementation and then evaluate your change. And it's just like, I don't know. How does anything happen?
Dude, this is so cool that we're having this IP session right now. Because I feel like in school, I don't think about the big picture really at all. Because we're so focused on, like, okay, here's one patient. What would you do for this one patient? Or what's going on with this one person? And our classes are all focused around that. It's like, okay, physically, what's wrong with them? What are their environmental conditions? What's their mental status? Like, how are you going to interact with a patient one on one? And what are the social skills that you need to accommodate this patient? And so, like, we're very focused on, okay, one person, but then Cat is like very big picture. It's like, okay, as a population, how are we going to fix these problems? And not so much on the individual. And then Loho's like in between because she has both NPH and she's doing a DO right now.
I feel like it's a part of my grand scheme though, because when I was doing public health, I was like, no one really listens to you unless you like have a lot of experience. And I was like, okay, what do I want my experience in medicine or like more public health stuff? And I was like, I kind of want to like understand people at an individual level before going. That was my take on it.
But that's cool that you have the background knowledge of the big picture while you're in med school.
Yeah, because other than IPE, we also have structural competency classes or whatever. And people are always like trying to be woke about, certain things. And I'm like, no, you're not thinking about it the right way.
Mm.
Sometimes they're like, oh, well, if there's like an alcoholic that comes in, like if they don't want to be treated for it, we don't have to treat them. And I'm like, okay, yeah, good, patient autonomy, but also like let's talk about other things. I think the way that I said it, I was like, so I personally wouldn't want to be addicted to alcohol. um, I was like, so I don't think we should not discourage them from drinking alcohol. I think we should, get them off alcohol. But I think we also need to think about like other structural things we can do to like improve their lives, like making sure that they're supported through like AA or something, or let's think even bigger picture. How did they get into alcoholism in the first place? What was their family life like? And kind of go from there. And that's how you can like be an advocate as a physician, I think.
This is exactly like the IP event that we did. It's like the one that I went to, it was like a case study where there was somebody who had overdosed. It was an opioid overdose case study, and they like went to the ER and basically had a terrible experience. And a lot of assumptions were made about like who they were, their availability for treatment, et cetera, et cetera. And like in the case study that we did, right? The person who overdosed, they like had a family and had a job. The doctors were like recommending that they clock into a 15-week rehab program or whatever. And it was just like, there's no way that person can do that because they have all these other responsibilities. And like sometimes assumptions are made about people's availabilities when they have like an addiction or whatever. And so like what kind of accommodations can you make to like help a person without disrupting their life? But then also understanding that, like you said, Loho, people don't want to be addicted to things.
I know. I was like, let's not like condone alcohol.
Because, yeah, it's not that people don't want to change or want help necessarily. It's just that interventions need to be helpful in the first place.
Yeah, like what's the point of even prescribing rehab if they can't do it and won't do it? It's kind of like, okay, out of sight, out of mind. I told the patient to do what I thought was best, but then they're not going to do it if it's not reasonable. I think we should change today's title
To winter break IPE.
Literally, though, the way that we went from we're blobs to actually like trying to solve patient health is kind of insane. If you think about it, it was just the inertia. We just needed
No,
to.
this was the activation energy we needed to not be blobs anymore.
It really was.
Yeah.
Wow, that was kind of beautiful.
Well, see, this is what's fun, like about not being a student, but like being excited about the things that you study, because like it comes out when you're not at school. I'm like, I like talking about this and thinking about it, but school makes it really all-consuming.
This is a big difference between grad school and undergrad, where undergrad, you have to take a lot of classes that you're not necessarily interested in and are not necessarily applicable to daily life. It's just like a lot of basic knowledge or foundational classes. But now that we're in school for things that we want to be in school for and that we feel passionately about, it's, I don't know, I feel like for all of our professions, it's like things that we think about on a day-to-day basis. And it's like things that affect our lives, right? So it's like public health and like PT, exercise, medicine, health. So it's like very integral to our lives. And so we think about it a lot.
Yeah, and you just have more context for the things that you're studying because you've lived more life and had
Mhm.
more experiences.
Yeah, because it's like in undergrad, you're just trying, or at least for me, it's like we're just trying to get through and just want to graduate. But then now it's like, okay, I don't want to just pass, I want to learn.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, well, good IP session, everyone. We'll see you next semester. TLDRs.
TLDRs, I think IPs could be really fun. And I thought this when I did mine, but the one that I did was over Zoom and it was like 5 to 8 p.m. So everybody was tired and it was dark. And I was just like, what are we even talking about? But I feel like if the three of us did the IPE case study thing that I did, it would be really fun.
It definitely is who presents it and like how it's all presented. If someone's like, oh, you have to do this IPE thing in the middle of your semester and like this isn't for a grade, it's just something you have to check off a box, I'm like, my energy needs to be put elsewhere. But if I'm like, you're talking with people about this thing that you really care about and maybe you can actually make an intervention to fix it, then I'd be like, oh yeah, let's do that.
No, I agree. Especially in the health field. There's so much potential for IPE stuff. Wait, does everybody know what IPE means?
I think we could find it once.
Interprofessional education. Okay, just.
But also, like, y'all have Google, so.
Oh,
you can
true. The burden of education is not on us.
Education. That was good. Well said.
TLDR, sometimes we just need a little activation energy to get the inertia moving. Does that even make sense? Is that how inertia works?
I don't know. I'm not a physicist.
I don't
It made sense to me. I got the vibes.
Okay.
We're not physics people here.
Yeah, don't quote me.
But I understand what you're saying, so it's
Thank
fine.
you. That's all that matters. It's for us.
TLDR, IPE could be so much better than what it is now. Also, I am still a blob.
Bye, Jane.
Bye, Jane.
Bye, Jane.